Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Bridge Talk number 31, actually. I'm Jonas Klevhag, and I am a business developer at the Bridge. I will host this session and lead this Bridge Talk through the lunch hour of this beautiful Thursday. The Bridge, as many of you already know, exists to connect science and technology on one hand with the business and societal development on the other hand, to push humanity forward towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We do so by creating collaborations between local stakeholders around the world with science and technology from the Bridge region, which we call the southern Sweden and the greater Copenhagen area. We find this collaboration creations extremely fascinating and interesting and fun. We also do it by spreading knowledge and inspiration through Bridge summits, through TEDx, the Bridge broadcasts, through Bridge interviews, and through Bridge talks, which leads us to today. If you want to be part of this collaborative action and fun, please join us as a partner or as a supporter by visiting our webpage, thebridge.se. Right. So today, Sweden has a strong self-image of leading the way for climate action. The latest report, though, has indicated that we are perhaps not as good as we think. But on the other hand, I think, and I argue, that the self-image remains, mainly with the argument that we are probably less not as good as we think than the other countries. That's my observation. Anyway, our best-in-class self-image is actually confirmed by the Swedish head of delegation to the UNFCCC, Mattias Frumery, who is right now preparing to go to Glasgow to the postponed COP26 in November. He's also one of the opening speakers at our pre-COP conference in April called Get Ready for COP26, where he will be looking for good Swedish examples that can help other countries increase their efforts to fulfill the Paris Agreement. So today's topic is transport, and transport of goods and people is one of the major contributors of greenhouse gas emissions. To reduce the impact of transport, we need quite a wide range of activities or different actions. And since December 2013, the 2030 Secretariat has championed this challenge to meet the Swedish targets of a fossil-free vehicle fleet by 2030. It's a coalition of the willing. It's independent of political sympathies and technical solutions. We're extremely proud to have the founder and CEO of the 20 Secretariat with us to talk about what needs to be done and how we are leading the way. Jakob Lagercranz, a warm welcome to the Bridge Talk today.
Thank you very much, Johan.
You're actually demonstrating the non-need for transport today and participating from your hometown, Alingsås. Is that correct?
That is correct. And as you said, it's about transporting people and transport, but also transporting ideas and transporting soundbites. And we can do that really well this way, I think.
I totally agree with you. Was the introduction of you fairly summarizing, or would you like to add anything, any hobbies, any previous CV bullets that could widen or broaden the picture a bit?
Well, no, I think it was a great introduction. Basically, I've been fortunate enough to work on environmental issues all my life. I joined Greenpeace in '84. I stayed there for 11 years. I was the executive director towards the end. Then I've stayed true to NGOs. I was chairman of the Swedish Association of Green Motorists. It sounds schizophrenic, but it's a great organization that has had a very strong impact in Sweden. And then I founded, together with Matthias Goldman, the 2030 Secretariat in 2013. So while working on environmental issues, it's become more and more transport for me, but also staying close to my goals. Basically, it's about saving the world, and that's what we are doing in different ways.
Fantastic. Thank you for widening the picture a bit. So we agreed to do this Bridge Talk as an interview with extra slides if needed, but we'll probably stick to just chatting. And by the way, for the audience, you who follow the streams either on YouTube or Facebook, please post your questions to Jakob as we go through the interview. We'll bring them up as we go or at the end, but make sure that you forward your questions and issues and comments to the broadcast as we go. Right, so we're all ready, all set to go?
I'm fine.
So as Swedes, we are used to regard ourselves, as I said in the introduction, somewhat as pioneers in sustainability. In what ways does this apply to transport and mobility as a subject? And what is this, basically, what is the state of sustainable transports in Sweden, would you say, Jakob?
Well, first of all, we have set a really ambitious target for Sweden. We've said, this was decision taken in Parliament in 2017, that we will decrease CO2 emissions by 70% in transport by 2030. And that is why we have the name the 2030 Secretariat, because we are there to push for that development. But this is a really ambitious target. No country in the world has an as ambitious target. The transport sector is probably the most difficult to deal with. And we've started in Sweden. We are the best of all the EU countries when it comes to electrification of transport. We have the most biofuels in transport of any country in Europe. So in many ways, we are doing okay. We need to speed up, but we are starting. On behavior, and that is the third part, we always need to think about fuels, vehicles, and behavior. We have just started. The pandemic it's a terrible pandemic in the world, but it has taught us to actually start working with digital means, things that we had in hand before the pandemic, but now we are starting to use in a much better way.
So would you argue then that we are at the forefront of many disciplines? You say in the use of biofuel and in electrified vehicles. I'm assuming that includes hybrid vehicles, not just the strictly electrical vehicles. But
yes.
But usually we hear more about the sustainable pioneering from Denmark and from Norway, and Norway being leading the way in electric vehicles by far, and in Denmark perhaps they're claiming the wind power flag, so to speak. When it comes to mobility, how could Sweden? Is it mainly by the ambitious targets that we're leading? Or would you say that we are actually spearheading a specific technology or area here?
Well, I think that we are at the forefront in many areas, but we are not talking about it. We are not known internationally as being number one in these fields. We were actually spearheading new technology. We have everything going for us in Sweden. We have political decisions that give a very clear direction. We have the policy measures in place. We have an industry that is interested in taking part in this development. So we have academia, of course. So we have the three important parts. But I want to congratulate Norway and Denmark. Norway has a 70% share of EVs, and mostly EVs, not so much hybrids in Norway. In the sale of new vehicles. So they are number one in electric vehicle development. Denmark took over when we tried wind power in the 70s. It didn't really fly in Sweden. Denmark took over. Today they have income of about 143 billion Danish crowns every year from wind power industry. 33,000 people are employed in it. And most importantly, Denmark is known for its wind power. when you go to a web page and look for wind power, Denmark is right there at the forefront. You get all the statistics for Denmark. You look for wind power Denmark. Norway is well known as number one on EVs. And that's why when Biden asked 40 heads of state to come to or meet him digitally for a climate summit, he of course included the 17 the highest emitters, but then he invited 23 more, and 2 Nordic countries were invited because they have shown that they can actually be constructive and develop results and prove that things can be done. And those 2 countries were Denmark and Norway. Congratulations, Sweden was not invited. It's a bit of a snub to us.
Yes, indeed. But well, is it really? Would you say that? I mean, you are actually saying that we have solutions. We are very good, but we're not so good at talking about it, and that's perhaps the Swedish way to be a bit humble. But nevertheless, we're not invited to Biden's leaders summit. Would you say that that's Biden's loss or Löfven's loss mainly?
Well, I think today it is Löfven's loss, because Biden is right now surfing on a wave. He's doing things rapidly. He has lots of plans that he's launching in a very fast pace. He has, of course, domestic problems that he has to face, but being connected to Biden, I think, is very positive these days. So Sweden will just have to think about something else we could do together with the US. What I think is important, I mean, Biden is looking at a $2 to $3 trillion initiative on sustainability in all fields. 2 to 3 trillion, that's 2 to 3,000 billion US dollars. It's a lot of money, and we have the UK government committing 12 billion pounds to sustainable development until 2030. So there is lots of money starting to flow around. And I think Sweden is, instead of putting in big money, hybrid is a good example of a great example in the long term. In 2040, it will be up and running. We'll see some developments before then. That is a great example of actually putting the money where our words are. So we have to start investing. We have to go stronger in sustainable development and use all the experiences we have.
Okay, so obviously there's momentum going on here, but if Sweden would try to convince Joe Biden to extend his invitation list, what would you say that we would put? How would we go about to do that? What would be the argument from Sweden? Where could we be best in class?
Well, I think on biofuels, absolutely, we are already best in class. We have some really pioneering development happening in Sweden in many areas, in many different places in Sweden. Heavy trucks is an area where we, with Scania and Volvo, we could really play an important role in the future. We should work much more on actually sharing the load of transport between road, rail, and sea. Today, it's too much hindering on road transport, which creates problems in the long term. So rail and sea should play a much bigger role. And then on the mobility questions, we actually have a chance to make our stand and actually prove that we can use the digitalization, where we are actually quite forward when it comes to digital means. We could use it to actually improve our efficiency and develop much more than what we have in the past.
So heavy vehicles, that's obviously more of a technology, and we could take a lead there. And digitalization is also a bit of a technology or a specific area or solution area. But you're also mentioning value chains and transformations of value chains and optimization of mobility systems. That is more of a sort of a team effort or combinatory discipline rather than excelling in one discipline. Would you say that that's a Swedish strong discipline to do the combinations rather than being the spearheading in one technology?
Well, I think so, because we have a long tradition of actually negotiating, meeting, anything from salaries to conditions in the workplace. I mean, we've always met and discussed and negotiated. And I think that we can actually meet along the value chain, as you say, and find solutions. Let's take me, for instance. I live in Alingsås. I live on a farm outside Alingsås. So for me to go to Gothenburg, which is the best way for me to actually commute or travel, if I have to travel, first we have to think about digital means. I mean, if I can avoid going to Stockholm, I'm so happy, because it saves me 6 hours of travel every day. But then for me, it could be taking my bicycle or my car or the bus to the train, then take the train to the city. And in the city, I could probably pick up anything from a cab to a bicycle to something, a loaning bicycle that are available in Gothenburg. So looking at the whole chain and seeing how can the different companies, entities, actors play together. Public transport is not just about public transport. It's about borrowing a bicycle. It's maybe about taxi when there are no buses, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm. Right. When we talked, you mentioned five things that we need to get better at to get invited to the Biden summits and whatnot, and to make ourselves known. What would you just briefly take us through those five bullets or five proposals to improve for Sweden regarding mobility?
I'd be happy to, because I think it's a bit un-Swedish, but we need to become a little bit more un-Swedish sometimes when we need to show what we're doing. The first one is dare to invest. I mean, we will not reach 70% decrease in CO2 in the transport sector unless we put money in there. Money from the government, money from companies. They have to agree on actually working jointly. Then we have to support what we are really good at, and that's innovation. We have to be prepared to actually risk by innovating and allowing many different innovations to play a role in the future society. We don't know who the winners are. What we do know, it will not be as it used to be, that's for sure. Then we have to dare to brag. When I look up wind power, as I said before, in Denmark, I see many pages, great information. In Sweden, I see a few. So on environmental technology, let's brag, let's show what we are doing. Let's show the pictures, the projects, the examples, the results, and let's do that much more offensively. I would have loved to make Jakobs Little Green. That would be a small booklet for all embassies in the world, for every ambassador to have in their coat pocket and bring out to say, let me show you an example of what we've done. And that would be one thing. So dare to brag. And also we should dare to stick to many solutions. Today in Brussels, they are looking at electrification or hydrogen. It seems to be the only solutions available for mobility and transport. Well, what about biofuels? What about optimization? What about the old solutions that we've had in place for many years? And Brussels brings me to the last and the fifth point. We have to go on the offensive. We cannot sit in Sweden and write letters to Brussels and hoping that they will adapt to our point of view. We have to go down to Brussels, companies, organizations, the government, and like I usually say, boots on the ground. We need to be in Brussels and show what we are doing and actually tell Brussels that we have such an ambitious target. You need to support what Sweden is doing rather than the other way around. So
quite simple stuff to actually emphasize, and also quite un-Swedish to some extent. Investing, well, not investing and innovating perhaps, but bragging, and then going out and about to brag seems like a bit of a challenge for the Swedish self-image, but nevertheless, an interesting way to improve, and a concrete way proposal to improve. You talk about many different solutions. You talk about the three different dimensions or focuses that you have: the vehicle, the fuel, but also the behavior. In Swedish, it's the 3B: the bilen, the bensin, and the beteende, the behavior. But so we talked a bit about the different technologies and the vehicles and the fuel, but let's focus a bit more about behavior, because I think it's quite interesting times we're living in, and our digital talk is a good example of how Sweden has lost one particular travel today or trip. What are the main drivers for new behaviors, and how can we really affect new behaviors or introduce new behaviors?
First, you said benzene for the second B. It's bränsle, which I just make a point of it because we have so many new fuels coming onto the market. Now we are looking at making fuels from emissions combined with hydrogen, and then all of a sudden you create a fuel from emissions. So it's just, I'm saying there is so much happening there. But then when it comes to behavior, it's an interesting area. Changing behavior, we instinctively feel, oh, I don't want to change my behavior. But what if we don't even notice it? I put in LinkedIn, I put an example of me living 3 kilometers from Alingsås. My kids are now 17 and 19, but 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we rented videos and we saw maybe a Disney film or another film, whatever. I rented a video box, or I rented a video. I took my car, I rented a video, came back, we saw the video, and maybe I was stupid enough to drive back to Alingsås and deliver the video back to the video store and then come back with my car. And that is 12 kilometers of driving just to see a video. I've stopped doing that. I'm not driving to rent videos anymore. And is that because I have changed my behavior and become smarter? No, I'm just streamed down all the videos we need to see. And of course, this has to be done sustainably, and you have to make sure that you don't use too much energy. But I promise you, it's much less than driving a car. So have I changed my behavior? No, I've adapted to new technology, and that's what we're doing now. We have seen over the past year, the pandemic year, we've seen such a tremendous development in just digital means and digital meetings. And now it's almost as good as meeting people. I'm not saying we shouldn't meet. I'd love to have a cup of coffee with you, Johan, but we'll do that some other time.
Yes, indeed. But so as an engineer, which I am actually back in the days, I would assume that technology drives new behavior. So why focus so much on behavior then, if technology already solves that issue? Are there other drivers than technology that can change behaviors?
Well, I am of the generation of Håll Sverige Rent, Keep Sweden Clean. That was basically a brainwashing campaign when I was a kid, teaching us never to throw paper on the ground. It was a huge public communication effort that was done by an NGO in Sweden. Tremendous effort. I still today, 55 years later, I cannot throw a paper on the ground. It's so stuck deep inside of me. So what I think we should have a public information campaign on sustainable development, on the fun parts of sustainable development, on the exciting parts. Similar to, the pension fund is sending out an orange letter to all of us every year. It's never a very positive read, I think. But that campaign itself cost about 100 million kronor every year. Let's say we put the same on sustainability. 100 million kronor for just communicating the smart ways of changing our behavior. That would be fun. That would be interesting.
Wow, I totally agree with you. I'm also the whole Sverige generation, and still brainwashed as well.
Yeah.
So the power of communication, or creating a vision for new behavior, for a new way of living, would be your best proposal there to actually promote new behaviors that we need to fulfill the sustainable development goals.
Well, that would be one very important part. And as you said, technology, you're the engineer, you think technology drives development. Well, we had technology for digital meetings over a year ago, but we didn't use it. And it didn't work because technology had not adapted to the increasing demand. I remember so many frustrating meetings over Skype or whatever, but now it's working. So the pandemic had to come in, a pressure, a whip had to come in and force technology to take those final steps. So I think it's always a development, technology together with people, communication, and actually showing people a better way to move forward, because it's not about stopping us from doing what we're doing today. It's for us to become more accessible, to become more available through digital means, and then combining that with real meetings in the real world. Of course, they always need to be there, but we'll cut down a lot on travel, I think.
But the pandemic obviously has been not a communication campaign and not technology, but a circumstance that increased the sense of urgency, definitely, of doing things differently. And since we couldn't meet, we had to meet in COVID-safe ways. So digital means obviously became much more interesting to us, even though, and then technology, I suppose, caught up with the needs of digital meetings. So increasing the sense of urgency by communication or by different means. Do you think that would be? How could that be used for mobility? How can we actually make the citizens more aware of this, or more give them a more sense of urgency regarding mobility?
Well, I think it's a combination of, let's say, for instance, the public transport sector. Fantastic what they've done. I mean, they run 90% on biofuels or electricity. They've done tremendous stuff and providing a fantastic means for all of us to travel together. But now I think that they will have to look at changing a bit after the pandemic, because they've been hit so hard. Now they have a chance of maybe coming back in a different way. It could be something as simple as finding agreements between employers and employees, where people who have the chance to work at a distance maybe stay the first hour every day to avoid crowding public transport in the morning. That could be an agreement, just 1 hour of the day you delay your traveling to work, if that is possible for you. Many of us will start working at a distance 1, maybe 2, 3 days per week. So I think that will also come, not because we are forced to do it, but because it is more effective, gives us better accessibility to what we want to do. So in that sense, let's not, the whip should be, there should be a carrot and a stick. Sorry, the stick has to be there. And then let's add a third part, and that's the lust to actually try new technologies and actually finding the possibility to avoid traveling 1 hour to work and 1 hour back. Most people love it. And we just have to see how that develops after the pandemic. It's up to us.
Well, I actually found out that coming to the office a few days less a week increased the flexibility of life, and in general terms, increased life quality for me personally. So reducing the number of trips actually increased the flexibility of my life. And that obviously would, I regard, on an individual level as a carrot. That would be an increased life quality. I might even respond to the lust issue there in trying new things to increase life quality. But also, of course, the sense of urgency, the stick metaphor there would probably work. But when we talk about increased life quality through new mobility or new ways of mobility, how we have so far regarded traveling or transports mostly as something we associate with distances. I mean, traveling distances, and but sometimes also with experience and adventures, but mostly something that is connected with distance. How could we connect it with other things, like life quality or well-used time or well-spent time, or other ways to regard mobility in the future? Or how do you see that change over time? How do you see the shift from going to rent the movie box to streaming in the mobility world?
Well, I think that we'll be aided by digital means, but we like to travel, and I think maybe if we can swap a bit of long distance travel to shorter distance travel, to maybe travel around in countries close to Sweden, maybe focusing more on traveling in Sweden, like we've seen over the past year, that would be one part of actually finding a solution to the fast increase in flight travel that we see more and more. But also we'll need solutions to that. I think that since we don't have a lack of energy really, I mean, you're the engineer, but we have more energy from the sun than we need in this world by far. So in the future, we will not have a lack of energy. So maybe by that time, we will travel long distances in a completely different way. We'll see. But in the meantime, we have to adapt and adjust to realities. And I think we'll see higher prices on traveling long distances with carbon taxes on aviation or reduction quotas or whatever will happen. So I think it will become natural that we will travel maybe shorter distances.
When it comes to meat consumption, which we see increase, we've heard the argument that we need to eat less meat. So sometimes if you don't want to go to a strictly vegetarian diet, the proposal is to eat less meat, but perhaps better meat. Less, but better. Would that be something that we could apply to traveling? You're implying that we should travel less, perhaps less long distances, but could we then suggest that we travel less but better, that we make the most out of our traveling and make sure that we actually, get the most out of it? Would that be a way to encourage new behaviors, you think?
I think that is a brilliant idea, and the meat example I think is great. And people react, we can't stop eating meat and so on and so on. Well, that reaction is gone now. I mean, it's changing. And what you're saying, that we should focus on good meat, the right type of meat. Meat could have a very tremendously different climate impact depending on what kind of meat it is. So let's choose the right one. Let's choose the good quality, and let's eat it less often. And that's a perfect way of moving towards the future. And then we will actually save some money that we can spend on other things that we really enjoy doing. And that could be digital, or that could be working in our garden or something else. So I think it's very important to focus on how can we increase the pleasures in this world. Eating a good piece of meat is fantastic, but we don't do it often enough.
So and choosing a good piece of travel rather than the everyday commuting and delays and crowding, which you implied by actually choosing flexibility and choosing another departure to avoid crowding, to avoid the peaks of the peak capacities of public transportation. That will help us increase public transports and lower the impact of transports, basically, in general terms.
Absolutely. And I think also we have a chance now to balance between countryside and cities, where in the countryside you will need cars in the future. There is no way you can run public transport in the countryside where few people live. So you need some kind of taxi-supported pickup system that takes you to the public transport along the large roads. But it allows people in the countryside to work at and be as accessible as somebody living in Stockholm. Let's take me just outside Alingsås. I mean, I can have the same access to a politician in Stockholm by digital means now as somebody working as a lobbyist in Stockholm. So we can balance between the countryside and the city. In the city, we need to get rid of cars much more than we do in the countryside. And there are more people in the cities, it will have a bigger impact. And there is a possibility to actually exchange cars for shared cars or public transport. So I think it's a great opportunity of giving everybody the same accessibility, but it's through completely different means. And you don't need to move away from your smaller city if you live in the northern part of Sweden. We can still talk like this.
So to most people, I'd say that EVs or electric vehicles seems like the technology or the silver bullet of transports becoming less climate unfriendly. We've seen in another technology area, in lighting, we've seen a shift from regular light bulbs to LED lights, and the LED lights obviously is much more energy efficient, up to 80% more energy efficient. But recent reports actually revealed a paradox in this, that once the technology reduced the energy consumption of lighting, the amount of lighting increased. So we are now seeing, especially around Christmas, we've all seen this almost light polluted gardens and decorations. Obviously, quite nice to my opinion, but still, there's a problem because some argue that energy consumption from lighting has actually gone up. The pandemic has taught us that we can travel less, and so travel has gone down, and the impact of travel and transport has gone down climate-wise. How can we make sure that we don't use technology to travel more, to repeat the LED paradox? Do you see any dangers there, or how would you describe that dynamic, basically, from a mobility point of view?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at a picture of the world from space, you see that light has increased tremendously over the past few years, only because, as you say, we have new technologies, so we say, we can use it much more, the so-called rebound effect. And note it, Christmas, okay, let's have some lights for Christmas. It's a dark time in Sweden, but when you walk around in the countryside and when you have new houses being built, like close where I live, when I go out walking in the evening, I see lights all over the place. It's not dark anymore. I can't see the starry sky. I can't see the stars up there because there are so many lights around me, even on the back of houses where people don't walk usually. So I think, again, it's us talking about it and understanding that this is not the way to move forward. I think is very important.
So, and basically another promoting talk for the digital meeting, and the non-transport is perhaps a good solution to that. And we're seeing tremendously good use of digital meetings instead of the transported ones.
Absolutely. And what we have to do was very important. I mean, we were able to stop smoking in restaurants, and people said that was going to be impossible. It wasn't. It was done overnight. And we have to see that behavior change is possible. It's not negative, it's positive, and nobody wants to go back to the way it was. So it can be done, and it can be done really quickly. The car took over from the horse in less than 10 years. The car took over from public transport in the United States, the best public transport country in the world at the time, in 10 years. So it's in the 10 years or 9 years now we have to 2030, we can really achieve a lot.
What new behaviors should Swedish citizens prepare to adopt in the near future?
Well, we are very good at sorting our waste. We are really, we've been trained and our kids know it by heart now. We have to sort our travel much more and actually think, what travel should I do at what time, and do I have to travel eventually when the pandemic is gone? Maybe I can work at a distance, and then you discover that all of a sudden this is much more efficient than anything I've done in the past. That makes a tremendous impact. If you stay at home just 2 days per month, work from home, you will have decreased your travel to work by 10%. 2 days per month. Most people can do that. I mean, 49% of everybody can work at a distance, and most people can work at home from, even if you have a work where you have to be in a place, sometimes you can stay at home also for that. So 2 days per month, that's a good target. 4 days per month, that's even better. And then we see how that impacts us and if we can get some more quality in life from that.
Good. So being more picky and choosy about whether to travel or not, that's a new behavior that citizens should prepare to adopt or expect to get into. If we lift it to policy level, what new policies do Swedish politicians need to work on or introduce or focus on right now?
Well, today you get a so-called reseavdrag. You get the benefit if you use your car. If you save enough time from travel, you get the benefit when you use your car. This is something that was introduced 90 years ago to support the introduction of the car in Sweden. Well, we don't need that anymore. We should, if anything, support traveling to work without polluting at all. So maybe staying at home should have a certain amount of support through the annual fiscal declaration. Maybe we should be able to buy, today we can't buy coffee or lamps or stuff for our workplace at home. Maybe that should be allowed in the future so people can actually set up a good working place at the distance. So those are a couple of things that I think really would work and help us in adapting to a new hybrid future, because it's not the one way or the other, it's a hybrid.
Yeah. Right. And Biden's meeting, once again, obviously it's in 2 weeks, so it's quite a little time, but will it also be a summit through digital means, or are people actually traveling there? Do you know?
No, it will be digital. Otherwise, it would have had to be next autumn. And I think it's a good step to have it digital. It doesn't have to mean that people meet in this way. They need to meet the big leaders once in a while, but not all the time. And talking about COP26, I mean, in Glasgow, that would probably be a real meeting, but it's what we do before COP26 that's important. It's not the meeting itself, it's all the preparatory work, all the discussions, and actually setting targets and getting coalitions of companies and interested parties to do something together. This is maybe what Sweden could do instead of going to the Biden meeting, put together a good PR portfolio on what Sweden is doing so people get to know much more about Swedish sustainable development.
And I'm very happy that you actually mentioned that opportunity too. So Biden's meeting is on April 22nd and 23rd, but as it happens, the Bridge is actually arranging a pre-COP meeting or conference on April 29 and 28 and 29 from Malmö, but digitally available, of course, where you will be one of the keynote speakers, Jakob. We're very proud to have you in one of the sessions on, no surprise, mobility. But where we are actually pointing out and showing off Swedish good examples of how other countries may adopt our solutions to increase their efforts for the Paris Agreement. So, and and we actually have the Swedish lead of the delegation to the UNFCCC, the COP, Mattias Frumery, as an opening speaker. And he's asked us to package these little good stories so that he can bring them with him in his inner pocket and pull them out when he's in the coffee line with other heads of delegations for other countries, to show them this is what we do in Sweden. I'm assuming that we will have quite a few of the mobility stories going that way to the COP in Glasgow in November. So let's hope that that's as good way to introduce new Swedish solutions to Biden and to the world in November. But that's April, and thank you very much, Jakob, for sharing this lunch hour with us. Really inspiring to listen to the outlook and to the new ways of how we should expect to travel in the future. Thank you for participating in the Bridge Talk today.
Thank you, and we'll be seeing each other in a couple of weeks' time, so I'm looking forward to that.
Indeed we will. So don't miss our digital conference, Get Ready for COP26 on April 28th, 29th. More than 50 organizations participating in 30 sessions on good examples that can be used to reach the Paris Agreement. Stay tuned for more information about Get Ready for COP26 at our website, thebridge.se. Thank you for joining us this lunch, and have a great rest of the day, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.